Hi, everyone. You're listening to Unguarded Podcast, and we talk about relationships, and we like to get unguarded and go to the deep personal things, and we hope that you really gain a lot of things from it. So today we have an incredible guest.
I know before we get to the guest, we didn't introduce ourselves. You didn't say who you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can start this again then.
No, we don't have to start it again. Let's start it from here. I'm just saying.
You guys are definitely
the people
married.
want to know who you are.
Would have gone there. Okay, yeah. So I'm Bec Smith, and this is my amazing husband. Who
I'm her plus one today.
Yeah.
And every day, every time we record.
Who makes me better and better.
We hope we make each other better.
Yeah.
I think we do.
That's true.
I love you. Thank you for joining for another episode. But we do have a special guest today.
We do have a special guest.
We do indeed.
I guess I'm very excited.
Yes.
And that's why
So
I'm jumping the gun here. But I'm excited because this person has become a dear friend. And what I love most is that she just opens her world to me and to us and to so many people, actually. So without further ado, can you help me welcome Alli Webb to the podcast?
Thanks for having me in that lovely introduction.
Yeah, I mean, I love being your friend. And
likewise.
You are so, what I love actually is you're very unguarded.
Yes.
From the first moment, well, maybe the first moment we met, you maybe were a little more guarded towards me, but I just knocked on that door, like, let's be friends. And then from the first coffee meeting.
Well, I think the very first time I was probably most unguarded was I don't know how many times we had met, but I think it was after church, I don't know if it was you who spoke or it was Erwin, but I came up to you and I was crying.
No, I came up to you.
I was crying. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
And I was like, I barely knew you. And I was like,
Yes.
oh my, first of all, why am I crying? Second of all, I don't even know this woman. What am I doing? And you were so warm and welcoming, and you said, let's get coffee. And then we met.
And then we had coffee, and then I remember texting you, and I was like, I hope she likes me, and I hope that was good. Who knows how that went, because you just never know after first coffee, right?
Yeah.
It's like a first date. First date, did it work? And then you didn't text back for a little bit, and I was stressing,
really?
Deep down. I was like, oh my gosh, I said something wrong. I don't know. We just don't
No, you were amazing.
No. And then you texted me a couple of days later, and you were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that I didn't respond. I've just been so busy, but I loved our meeting. Let's do that again. And I was like, oh, I just exhaled. I'm like, okay, great. We can proceed with this friendship. And then we really gone through a lot.
You did you said a prayer for me in the middle of the sidewalk, and I was like,
exactly.
What? Right here, right now. I was like, what?
That's where I thought, oh my gosh, I lost her. She's like,
no, it was definitely not something I experienced, but I was like, oh, that's really sweet. I was like, oh, is that what people do? What? But I loved it. No, it was so sweet. Yeah,
it's awesome. I'm excited. I'm a third wheel. I'm very just here with the girls. But no, I echo and I agree so much. There's some people that you meet and it's like a slow burn, or we'll develop a friendship over time or chemistry. But I feel like immediately from the moment we first met and you just became family. It was natural, it was seamless, and whenever you're in the room or you're at the thing or you're around, it's just full of more vibrancy. So that's one reason why we're excited. Thank you for saying yes.
Yeah, of course.
We threw out the invite, and it was like all the million things that you're doing, probably not likelihood that you're free, but I love you immediately. You're like, yes.
Well, I love what you guys are doing too. I always jump at the opportunity to step outside of my normal kind of box of what I talk about, which of course I'm so grateful, to talk about Drybar and building my company and all of that. But it is, to sit down with people you love and trust and talk about getting a little deeper. And like what David said, it is. I find it really healing. I know it's healing for me when I hear people that I trust, admire, follow, whatever, that are talking about something. You're like, oh, me too. And it is really healing, which I think is probably why I talk about the personal things that
Yeah.
I do, especially from the perspective of being, you know, somebody who's had some success and has done some cool things, and then the natural expectation is like, oh yeah, your life must be great and perfect, you know, and it's not like that for any of us, but there's a facade, I think, that gets kind of built around, you know, someone who looks like they've had a lot of success, and, you know, which is such a silly idea, you know. There's no real, I mean, to me, as far as the life that I've lived and the measure of success, you know, it certainly has nothing to do with, or very little to do with, my company as much as it has to do with the people that I've affected, and and my children, and, you know, being able, I always felt like, you know, speaking of God and being a mosaic, is like, I always felt like the more money that I made in my job was like the more money I had to give. And it was like my kind of quiet pact with God of like, I'll give more when I make more, you know? And not to say that I wouldn't give, you know, when I could, but just wanting to like, it feels like a real privilege to me to be able to like help a friend who needs money in a pinch, or, you know, just to be able to like donate to more things and just help people in different ways. And it's like, you know, every time I you know, have some sort of financial gain, I want to pay it back. And I feel like it's like almost like I have to, like there's some higher power that's like, you can't just, you know, go buy a boat. Like you gotta do some other stuff with that, you know? And I think that's kind of how it keeps on. It's interesting because I don't have a lot of scarcity. Like I don't have a scarcity mindset around money. I do seem to have a little bit of a scarcity mindset around love and relationships, which is really interesting, right? It's like, well, shit, maybe if I didn't, you know, things would be different. But it's interesting, you know, how
that's a good
life.
That's very interesting. Let's go there. We're already here. Let's jump.
Because I know your parents were entrepreneurs too.
Yeah.
And that's where you talk about how you became an entrepreneur, like just by watching them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever really, and if you've gone there before, but did you learn about marriage through them as well? Like what played out to you when you were growing up, and what did you think about marriage?
Well, I think, you know, I don't know that I thought about it that much. My parents had an interesting marriage. I mean, they got divorced later in life, which was, at the time, I was 30 when they got divorced, and it was quite a shock. But then like the unraveling of that and learning more about that, which is, you know, not my story to tell.
Sure.
But it was a little like, it did feel like a little bit about like, you know, like my mind just kind of like was like, wow, you know, like thinking about all these different stages in my life of like what I maybe thought love and marriage was. Yeah. So confusing.
Sure.
But I think I thought more as I got older, like when I was like even like 18, 19, young, I really wanted babies. Yeah. And now I think part of why that was, in retrospect, in many years and lots of work, is I think I really wanted that deep connection that you have with a child, which of course you guys understand quite well. You have 17 children. They just
we really wanted a lot of love.
Yeah. But I think I've thought about that, you know, more recently, like, oh, I must have like really, I remember so well watching the way a baby was with its mom and seeing how like the little hands like clench on, and like a baby always wants its mom, like kind of sometimes will go to other people, but always wants to go back to the mom. And I remember like thinking, I really want that. Like I want that level of connection. And I didn't ever think about why, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. My parents weren't terribly affectionate. They weren't, my parents were loving and they were great parents, but I don't remember there being a great deal of affection.
Yep.
You know, so I feel like maybe that's where I was like longing for it. And so, you know, I was like, let's find a husband, let's have some babies, you know? And so I was like off to the races. And so I don't know that it was, you know, I mean, my parents loved each other for sure, but I don't think that their marriage was like this gushy over the top love that I feel like I'm kind of always searching for, is this like, you know, I also have learned a lot about myself that and I think it serves me really well in business, where I'm so like for lack of a better word, like I like a lot of excitement and drama, and like you know, like
Sure.
I'm really driven by that.
Yeah.
You know, and in business that can be okay. In work, it's like you're kind of always in go mode and making shit happen, which I'm really good at.
Yeah.
You can't do that I've learned the hard way.
Yeah.
You can't do that in relationship. You know, the way. And my relationships, all of them have started out fast and furious, like, you know, 0 to 60. Like I've never had a relationship that's like, we've started out as friends or we started casually. It was like, we were in love after 2 weeks and that was it.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, maybe that's not the way.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out, which feels like I'm a little behind or late or something, but you know, here I am.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I love even just the fast and furious, because when you think about love or people talk about romance, looking for somebody to spend your life with, all those things, so much of it's talked about, it is the chemistry, it's the spark, it's the, can you see yourself with that person, is there vitality, you know? But then what you're talking about is maybe there's a different layer to love that isn't just in the initial spark. Even we were talking with some friends recently about, they were like, for us now, they've been married like almost 20 years and they're like, the love is different now.
Sure.
You know, one of our friends was saying, I'm even feel bad sometimes. I'm like, oh yeah, like when we were first together, it was like, I can't wait to see her, spend all my time with her. And now he's like, I don't know if I need to spend all my time with her. You know, it's just a different like lane. Yeah. What do you feel like you've learned about yourself in the midst of all that?
Well, I think that I think it was like, I think I still have this, at least I'm aware of it now, of this like, you know, no one's coming to save me. And I think that I've always looked for that, you know, and I think I'd be lying if I said I don't feel like I still kind of secretly want that.
Sure.
You know, it's like you think you get into this relationship and then like everything magically is amazing in your life. And, you know, and I look at like my friends, like my best friend who, you know, has been with her husband for 12 years and like, you know, she's got her own set of problems and things inside the marriage, outside the marriage, you know, but it's like, for me, it is like, it feels like the missing link. But, you know, and it's like this kind of dance that you're in of like, I want the relationship and I think that that's going to fulfill something. But, you know, and then everyone's like, oh, you have to be okay on your own. And, you know, and it's like, I am okay on my own. Like, I'm good. Like, I've got my life. I have a really great life. I'm really blessed. I'm really grateful. Like, I have healthy kids. I have, you know, I have a really good life. It's just, there's that missing piece for me. But then to your point, like, how do I bring in that piece without losing myself? And I historically have lost myself in relationship, like kind of given myself away almost, like, you know, just making everything about that. So I think that that's kind of my big challenge, or will be my big challenge in the next relationship, to not lose myself. And I think that like what your friend was saying, I think that and I wish I had learned this sooner, that if I can balance and like not lose myself in the things that I like and the things that I like doing. Like, I'm that girl, I hate to admit it, but like would cancel plans with a girlfriend because the guy called.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, I'm sure I'm not the only person out there. I feel like there's a Taylor Swift song there. You know, it's like we just sometimes do that. And I don't want to be that girl, but I've largely been that girl where it's like love and romance and all that stuff supersedes everything else. So for me, I think it's finding the balance of like being able to get into a relationship and not give it, you know, my therapist would tell you that I give I lose myself in the relationships, and I will give everything over to a man. And I have to, you know, be better about that. But at least I'm aware of it.
Yeah, that's great. You're growing. That's growing. What I love is like when you mentioned about trying to find someone, that I think the important part is finding someone who's worthy of your love. That's not going to take everything from you. And maybe that's where who you choose is so important. Because someone who really does truly love Alli is never going to ask you to give for you to give it all.
Yeah, if you know him, send him my way.
Yeah, I believe he's out there. He may
like
be
you
listening.
Guys, so many people are like, oh yeah, I met at church. I'm like, I come to church a lot. Everybody's married. But yeah, no, I agree, and I think that is, you know, I don't know if like my picker's broken, and I don't know what it is. It's like you think that, you know, in the beginning of a relationship, and yeah.
But I think, you know, I think what I love is like you're really investing, you're taking time to invest in you.
Yeah.
And surrounding yourself with like really healthy people so that your radar becomes stronger and healthier.
Yeah.
So that, you don't need to just throw it to anyone. You're just like, okay, I want to find that right person because this is going to be for it, right? This is your.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when I was dating. This has become a dating podcast.
Yes,
I love it.
When I was dating before my second marriage, I think it was like interesting because I felt like this weird feeling. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm like, I could fall in love with anybody. You know, like how sometimes you feel like your heart's so open that you're like, in that. I think I was in that phase, and I don't know if that's part of why that didn't work. That's who knows, but where I feel like now, to your point, I'm very discerning, and I've dated a lot, and I've gone out with lots of different guys, and it's really kind of the complete opposite. Where now I'm like, I'm super disappointed most of the time, and I'm like, I'm like, I can't. Not that I want to fake it, but like I'm like there, I don't. They're like I feel like I'm so connected to my body now that like I can get on the phone with somebody and be like, oh, that's a no. Like this is, not even being like judgy. It's just like it doesn't feel good in my body to be talking to you. So no, this is a no. And I'm much more like I say no most of the time. I could be in a relationship right now. It just wouldn't be the right one. So to your point, I'm trying to be really discerning. And obviously I've been burned. So I'm like, well, we got to be real careful this time.
So what are you looking for?
In a man?
In a man, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think, and maybe this is in my head and you're a guy and I must have perspective on this. It's like, I feel like there's just in general, and this is, I'm sure I've mentioned this to you guys before because I say it to anybody who will listen that like, I feel like, and I know Aaron's talked about it. I've heard Erwin talk about it, where it's like men, the pendulum has swung very far. And I think, having to do with Me Too and like female empowerment and all that I think men are timid and intimidated by women, especially strong, successful women, which I am. Sure. And I am alpha. Like, but I feel like the right guy will be able to like naturally soften me where I feel like, and he's, so for me, it's like, I need a really strong man who's, successful in his own right. And that doesn't mean like you have to be a billionaire, just you have had success, know who you are, my experience in the last year has been that, men are just, I mean, to get granular, it's like on dating apps, it's like you connect with people and then never hear from them. I'm like, what are you doing? Why did you connect with me if you don't want to talk to me? Like, what do you do? Why? Why would you do that? And it's also like, I believe in chivalry and I believe in like the man taking the lead, like, which, haters can come at me for that. But like, I want that. I want a man who opens the door. I want a man who pays. I want a man who's like the man. Yes. And I think that not all women agree with that. So I know that could be a hot topic, but it's what I like. And I feel like a lot of men are not that, where they're kind of waiting for the woman to do it. And it's just not my jam. And so I'm very perplexed, it's like Raya, for example. I'm sure you guys have heard of this dating app. It's like, it is the weirdest dating app. It's like you connect with people and then nobody reaches out. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I want you to do it. I'll respond when somebody reaches out, which, some guys do. I respond, they reach out, I respond, and then nothing. And I'm like, what? What? Why?
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure sometimes like something happens and whatever, but like that happens all the time. And I'm like, what is going on with these men? What are they doing? And I want to get all the men in a room and be like,
and ask them,
what's the deal? So I don't know. Do you know why?
100%. I mean, I think that's a huge
Joe,
issue that we have
why?
in
Yeah,
culture
tell
right
us.
now, and it is one of the things where I have really noticed in a lot of guys is that we are losing a lot of like that. Hey, I'm just going to take charge. I'm going to show.
Like they're scared, right?
Yeah, and it's like, you know, like we had one episode we talked about like trying to help people shoot their shot, you know, and we got some feedback of people just going like, and I think guys get so jammed up of like, oh, but if I say this, is this going to come across too hard?
Yeah.
Or if I don't, it's like a dance
They're
where
scared.
you get scared or you're trying to create the perfect environment. I'm like, there's never been a perfect environment when it comes to dating, when it comes to love, when it comes to relationships. You just try. There's no guarantee. There's no like.
Right.
You may look like a fool. And
Yeah.
Exactly. And I
Yep.
think that like I'm that person that would go do that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
even like when I'm trying to like put myself out there. Like
Yeah.
I'm instead of like working from home all the time, like I'll go like I was at San Vicente Bungalows today because I remember there and like there's like a nice place to work. So I'm like, I'll just go work out of here.
Sure.
You know? And I'm like in my mind, I have a fantasy of like a guy like as I'm walking out, he's like,
Yeah.
wait, stop. Like, you know, and like
Can I take you out for a drink?
or like, yeah, like I just had to meet you. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
where is that? And I think that sounds a little bit from like our generation, or at least my generation of like movies,
Sure.
where like, you know, with like the holding up the thing,
Totally. Yeah.
you know, those, I love a grand gesture, you know, and I think that that's like a dying art for men.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, walk up to me, approach me. Like, even if it's not going to be something like I would respect that, you know, somebody who did that. And,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't seem like that happens, you know, and then just, you know, meeting on dating apps is like,
I know.
So weird. Yeah. You'd rather it be natural, organic.
yeah, yeah. And those, you know, those moments don't always happen. I mean, I know, like,
Yep.
I know how you guys met. I know the story. I don't know if we
Yeah.
talked about it on the podcast yet, but
Here we have, yeah.
you know, it's like, I want that.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know? I think
Although
everybody
I
does.
did have to
Yep.
go to him.
You
But
really? I thought he came
yeah.
to you.
No, I was like,
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Yeah.
well, I followed him, first of all.
She stalked me 100%.
And
Yep.
I tried to sit next to him, and he got up and he left. And I was
I
like,
do remember that. part
dang
of
it. Then I'm standing in the middle of the room. I see him by the door, and I'm like, should I go up to him? And I just feel like God's like, if you don't, you'll regret it. So go for it. What do you got to lose, you know? And I'm like, okay.
See?
So I walked right up to him. I was like, hey, I'm Bec. He's like, I'm Joe. And then like the rest is history.
But when,
Yes.
okay, so
then-
that I'm curious from your perspective,
Yeah.
like why you didn't do anything in that moment before.
Because I didn't see her. So on my perspective, all this thing where she says she stalked me, right? She was literally, funny you say, she was literally holding up a
So
sign
that's true.
at Mosaic here, our church, that said, welcome to Mosaic, I think.
Yeah.
You know, but I didn't see her. And it just happened that she saw me and then followed me into Mosaic. And then the person, because I was never supposed to, there's so many layers to our story, and we shared this before, that are wild and crazy. But I wasn't supposed to be there. Just happened to be there that one day. And then because I was there that day, the guy who was leading that campus was like, oh, you're here. Do you want to do like an announcement? Talk to the crowd. I was like, sure. So I went to sit next to a friend who I didn't want to do it by myself. So I went and sat next to him. Again, I didn't know this girl's following me and stalking me.
Okay, I
She
wasn't
sits down next to
stalking.
me.
But
And as I'm talking to my friend, I did notice her boots.
Her boots.
These dope Italian
yeah,
leather,
they were
brown
beautiful.
boots, had a flat, went up to me, had a flat. Still, 16 years later, I can remember the clear as day. And I saw it at the corner of my eye, and I remembered, oh, I got to find out who owns those boots. Because I was like, whoever has that dope of boots, got to be a dope person.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to I'm looking at her boots, so I didn't want to scan up and down, so I was like, I'll find the boots later. Because then I got up, I left.
Yeah.
And then before I could find her, even though I was scanning the room, then it was like the notebook,
The moment.
her across the room, me across, it was raining indoors,
Yeah.
like all that stuff. Yeah.
I was gonna say that I think, like, we have a lot of friends that are single, and they're trying to find
do?
their yeah, I know, but
Are
not
they all
really guys.
women?
I mean, more,
There's a
more
lot
on
of-
my end, girls.
Yeah,
but,
your girls. Yeah.
yeah, my girls. So, but one thing I have to say is, like, I saw him, I thought he was cute. I followed him and I sat next to him because I was like,
You made it happen.
I made it happen. And I'm like, there's so many times, even at Mosaic, where, these cute guys are around. I'm like, to any of my friend, and there's a cute guy, go get it. Go sit, make yourself in a
Put yourself in the environment.
proximity to them, because they may not see you if you're standing on this side of the room, you may be in the same room, but you won't cross paths.
Yeah.
And I do think that like there's a lot of fear of putting yourself in position where that person will see you, or you say hi, heaven forbid, and you never know.
I know.
So
You're right. I mean, I think that there is. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm not even like last night. I went to a dinner and we were at this restaurant and I was sitting with a guy who's married and I was, telling him because I by the way tell everybody I'm single because I'm like somebody you never know who knows somebody
exactly.
And like the setup is great.
Sure.
So I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm single. And he was like, let's go to the bar and let's see. And like we walked to the bar and he's like, do you ever go and sit at bars? I'm like, never. I'm like, I'm just not that girl. Like I'm not gonna do that. But I mean, I just can't. I don't know why. I just can't bring myself to do it. I think Mosaic should have like a singles
yes, we should
thing.
Totally.
Like a singles night.
Maybe we'll make it happen. We did a speed dating one time years ago.
Oh my gosh.
It was all these singles and they just came and
was it predominantly women?
No, it was like pretty half and half. Yeah. I think you had to RSVP before to make sure it was like 50-50.
It's so weird. It's so funny that we're talking about this. I was at my dentist this morning and sometimes dentists also have like a TV that you can watch while you're sitting there, which I appreciate.
Me too.
But it happened to be like the news this morning. They were talking about speed dating. I was like, this is funny that I'm sitting here and fucking dating. Sorry.
Yeah.
I can't say the F word in Mosaic.
But you can on this podcast.
Anyways, and I was like, that's interesting that that's on right now. But I was like, I'm like, could I bring myself to go to one of those? I don't know. But I feel like at Mosaic, it's like I'm comfortable. I know you guys.
Yeah, it could be more safe.
I mean, yeah.
And
yeah, let's do it.
But we talk about it all the time. Like there's here, with Mosaic and then our community, I work here, right? It's a huge part of my job, my responsibility. And I love the relationship that we have. I love the life that we built. And people all will even wonder with this podcast, why are you guys talking so much about relationship? Why do you care so much? Because we're like, why would I not want
everything.
the very thing that has brought me so much joy?
Yeah.
Why would I not do everything I can to help people that I care about, people I love, and friends that I've known forever and friends I'm barely meeting to discover this? And that's why, for us, I love the story that we met at Mosaic. That was a part of who we were, but I think it's because also before we ever met, 4 years before we ever met, I think this is like the season of life that you're talking about, that you're in right now. 4 years before we ever met, both on opposite sides of the world, her in Australia, me in, I was in Arizona at the time. We both decided the number one thing we need to focus on is ourselves. Mm-hmm. The number one thing we need to orient, and for us, it was like a faith conversation. It was like, I don't feel like I'm the best version of myself. Let me ground myself. Let me root myself in this core thing for us. And then let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. It wasn't I'm gonna do this so I find this incredible woman. No, it was just like, I know that I'm not investing in all that I could, be. Let me do that first. And then it's crazy. Literally 4 years later, all the things and the dominoes that fell in, we happened to meet each other at exactly the right time where we both, our desires changed. What we were looking for changed. Mm-hmm. If I would have came across Bec, and the person I was 4 years previously, she would have never saw me. Yeah. Because she was mature. She was like, I'm not playing games anymore. Like, I know what I want. Yeah. And the person she needed or was looking for, I was not that man yet. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's so many times where I think in relationships, when you're in these moments where you're like, I'm not in a relationship now, and I want to be. We can't control.
I've met people, recently that was like just the timing, maybe could have been something, but it just wasn't the timing, just wasn't there. And to your point, like for whether it's me or him or whatever, it's just not meant to be. Yep. And then then it's like a trust conversation of like and faith, of like when it's supposed to happen, it'll happen, and which I deeply try to remember.
For sure.
Is like, there's no point in like worrying and stressing about this. It'll happen when it's supposed to happen. But like, how do you actually detach from that outcome that you want, and like making it, because I think that there's like, for me, it also might feel like a little bit of a ticking, clock, because I'm about to be 50 and I'm like, gosh, it's like, I know I have a lot of life to live and whatever, but it is still like, okay, like I'd like to get on with it, and
for sure.
and I also feel like I've spent the last year and a half doing so much work on myself, and I think there's always growth and whatever, but I feel like I'm a much better version of myself than I've probably ever been.
It's awesome.
And so I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I am
for sure.
ready.
Yes.
But now it's more of just like, there's what is it like letting go and letting God and just trusting that there's it's out of my control and it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. Or am I supposed to? Will I get that hit if like I should go talk to that guy?
Yep. It's interesting you say that too. Like how do you trust and let go? Like there's Usain Bolt, the sprinter, right? Jamaican.
Yeah.
He was the best sprinter in history. Still has all these world records. But I was researching about him a few months ago, and I found a fascinating thing. In sprinting, they call the law of reversed effort. So Usain Bolt, when he was younger, was obviously had the talent and was so fast, but he ran so much slower than his peers. And they couldn't really figure out why until this one coach came alongside him and started like training him. And the coach taught him this principle, the law of reversed effort. And this principle in sprinting is that you don't run at 100%. That they actually teach you if you can learn how to run at 90%.
Wow.
Like not, you're still running fast, but you don't try too hard.
Yeah.
That allows
Wow,
your muscles
good.
relax.
Yeah.
And you actually run faster. And once he started, isn't that crazy? Once he stopped running
amazing.
as hard as he could, he actually ran faster.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so many things
Such a good
that
metaphor for
relates
life.
to, but I feel like so often I've seen with friends in relationships where it's like, or you've been in a relationship where like, oh, they're trying so hard or he's trying too hard. And like, it's like, it's so unattractive when you're like, no, but just relax a little bit, just calm down, But I feel like there is some of that space what you're talking about.
I think you're right. I mean, and even like recently I'm like, I feel like I'm trying too hard that I need to like, let the foot off the gas a little bit. It doesn't mean that like, okay, I'm done.
Totally.
Like I don't want, it's like, it can't go to that extreme either. Right.
Sure.
So it's like exactly what you're saying is like, I have felt myself be like, okay, we need to put a little less energy into this, even though it's still something I want and I'm open about. It's like, all right,
There's a combination of working for something and then also letting it be. And trusting and like growing. You just keep growing until you're like, okay, I always had this like innate feeling. First of all, even years earlier, like I can't wait to meet my husband. I never felt like I'm never going to meet him.
Yeah.
I always had that belief. And then when I got to LA, I felt I was even closer to him. I was like, I just feel like I'm going to meet my husband. And I feel like me relaxing in that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to work so hard for this because I know he's right around the corner.
Yeah.
And I get that sense with you too. It's like you've done all the work and you do go after things.
Yes.
You're not afraid
No.
of anything actually, probably. So when it comes, like I think you'll know like, oh, this is someone I want to pursue or I want to like at least connect with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, just staying open to lots of different possibilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love to even, I was listening to a podcast that you did I was listening to it yesterday and I was amazed at like how, with Drybar, you had to work so hard at it that it wasn't like an overnight success, even though there was some success obviously quickly on.
Yeah.
But then there was like the downfalls and you're like, okay, I now have to figure this out. And it's like, you just kept going. You were tenacious and you fought through the tough times. And it just made me think, even as you're talking, when it comes to marriage, that there's that spark and then there's going to be the times where, okay, this is a roller coaster. There's going to be really, it's easy. And then there's times where it's really hard. And it's more like, okay, I'm just going to commit. I'm committing to this. And I do really love that about you. I feel like that's why you're so successful is because when you're in it, you're committed.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like maybe when you meet friends, you're committed to them too.
Yeah.
It feels like a sense of like when I've met you, I'm like, I think she's like loyal to me. Like you're like, yep, you're my person and I'm going to.
I am like that. I am very loyal. I'm very loyal. Yeah. 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 I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, I gave 16 years to my first marriage,
Yeah.
you know, even though I knew really early that
Yeah.
it was not going to, you know, and I wrestled with that so much for so many years, you know, and Grant came along, my first son, and it was like, you know, which is a whole other podcast of like, I used to say he was the love of my life, which you can't really do. And now I know that I learned that lesson because it put an unnatural burden on him, and it's a whole other thing. But he was like, you know, that it kind of goes back to what I was saying. I don't know if we were recording it about like wanting a baby so bad, and putting all this, like I really think it was like all of my love into this kid, and my husband at the time, Cam, was like, I want to be the love of your life, like he shouldn't be the love of your life, and I was like, well, he is, you know, and I didn't really understand it, and it just, I was so enamored. I mean, you remember, you know, when your first kid is born, you're like, it's just the craziest love, right? That it's unlike any other love, and it is unlike any romantic love, and it's a whole nother level. But I mean, I stayed in that marriage for so long because I thought, you know, I made this commitment, and you know, I didn't want to be divorced, and I didn't want all of that, you know, but you know, at some point I realized like, I've also got to like live my life, and I've given a lot to this, you know, which in my second marriage, you know, I was same thing, you know, we had a lot of problems, but I would have stayed, you know, and, you know, and, you know, it's crazy. It's like, you just don't, I think I believe that like anything is surmountable, you know, and I really tried to make it work with my first marriage, and you know, I was certainly to blame for a lot of my second marriage not working, but I don't think I would have left it, you know. So you know, I know that there's work to do, you know, and relationships aren't easy, and they take a lot of work and perseverance, and like you were saying about your friend, I mean, like that really resonates with me because I wanted so much attention from my second husband. Like I mean, I like attention. There's no, I mean, you know this, you know, I love being on stage. Like I like commanding a room. Like it, for better or worse, it's, you know, who I am. And in a relationship, I want that too. I wanted a lot of attention. I've now learned, and I kind of like, can't wait to take it out for a spin. Be like, no, you go play golf, you go do your thing, you go, like, I don't need to be with you every second of the day. Where I think I felt like in order for a relationship to be great, like I need to spend every waking moment with this person, and everything's got to be about this person. And now I've learned with a lot of work and heartache and pain that like, I can't, this is back to like not losing myself. Like, oh, you know, you can be in a healthy relationship and it doesn't have to be your whole life. You know, I've always made relationships my whole life, you know, which I think was the big learning for me. And I think it was like this like blurry line of loyalty and, you know, if like you have to be my whole world and I have to be your whole world. And I think the older you get that wisdom of like, well, maybe not, you know.
I mean, it's interesting that you were saying that, you dropped everything so that they would be your whole world, but then you also wanted it in return.
Yes.
Which is a very tall order, and
and not fair.
Not fair,
Yeah. I mean, and you know, I don't think that I would have learned that lesson had the marriage not fallen apart. You know, it would have just it was kind of this train.
You couldn't stop it. So in some ways, even though it's tough to have lost it, it was a gift.
Yeah, it was a gift, 100%. I mean, even in, you know, aftermath conversations, you know, my ex asked me, like, do you think you would have done all this work on yourself had the marriage not ended? And I was like, I don't think so, if I'm being really honest, you know, because, you know, it is a form of rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
When you hit the ground, you're like, well, shit, what now? Where do I, you know, how do I rebuild myself? And you know, we rebuild from hard lessons, and hopefully we learn from them, which I've really tried. It's like there's got to be a silver lining, you know? So,
I mean, it's insane the level of resolve and resiliency that you have, but also not just that you have resiliency, but the fruit of your resiliency is actually hope. That you're a very hopeful person. You know, you're a very optimistic person. Like, even I can imagine there's a lot of people, and maybe even listening, or I know of friends who have been hurt or had heartbreak or betrayal or divorces, and they're like, I'm done. I'm not cool, single the rest of my life. I'm not looking for it. But I feel like the opposite has happened in you.
Yeah.
What is it about you that you're able to, like, hardship? And I know you talk a lot about this in your book, right?
Yeah.
The Messy Truth with the Messy Collective. Like, it's in your branding and you're like you're okay with messy.
That's good.
What is it about you that it doesn't break you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it has, but I don't, and it's a good question. I think I really believe in love, and I think that that's where it all comes from. Like, it just, like, love on so many levels really resonates with me. Even, like, as you're talking, I was thinking about, people who've lost their dogs, like, which I know is a little bit of an interesting parallel, but it's really heartbreaking when you lose a dog. If you are a dog owner, you know what I'm talking about. And you guys don't have dogs yet, although we're angling. The kids really want cahoots with your kids.
But I know we know what you're talking about all too well. We had a friend, we went to, like, a friend who lost their dogs, like a dog funeral, which we didn't, like, in their living room. We didn't realize that's what it was. We thought we were just coming over to hang out, and the dogs were, like, there.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, oh my, yeah. But it was, and I'm not a dog person, but to your point, it was a real heartbreak.
It was devastating.
And a couple years ago, one of my dogs died, and it was excruciating and it was heartbreaking. And I, it's funny because this isn't funny, when I see people who've lost their dog and, like, post about it, because a lot of people post about it online, it's like, that will take me down.
Sure.
Like, I read a post about someone losing their dog, I am a puddle, you know? And the reason I bring it up is because I've met a lot of people who kind of harden around, like, I'll never get a dog around. Even my father, like, we had a dog growing up that he was just in love with and was destroyed when that dog died. And I was like, get a new dog. And he was like, no. And I meet so many people who are like, I'm not getting a dog. I'll never get a dog. And I've thought about that. I'm like, because if you get a dog, the dog you're hopefully going to outlive that dog. And that pain's coming.
Totally.
It's coming.
Yeah.
There's no stopping that pain. It's coming, and I have this little dog that I'm obsessed with now, and he's like my boyfriend basically. And I'm like, if, like, Dusty's not around, like, it will be devastating to me.
Yeah.
But yet, a few months after Cooper, my last dog died, I was like, I got to go get a dog because I love the love of a dog. I love the unconditional love. I love dogs. I'm such an animal person. I've always had dogs. And I think it's like it is a similar parallel. It's like, just because I've had my heart broken and love hasn't worked out for me, it's like, it doesn't, like, love is all there is at the end of the day.
Yes.
Like, how could you give up on love? So I guess that's, like, the best way I can answer that is I think that's where my resiliency comes from, because I've been lucky enough to be in love, and I know the feeling, and I know it's something money can't buy. It's the best feeling that there is, and I'm like, I'm gonna keep looking for it. I'm not gonna give up on it.
It's good.